today a simple way for everybody to measure their travels, to record it, to document everything, so that when they come off the track the first run, they know where they're really at, and it's all relative to what they've done in their spring machine. So what I do is, first when my shocks are on my car, and let's say I'm at ride height, race ready, everything's set, I'm on my scales. The only thing that's not done is I don't have the bar set on the car. Everything else is done. The car shook, rolled back and forth, race ready. I'll go and I'll take and I'll hook onto my shock, and I'll run this up to a travel. Alright, so this is the left front for example. So I'll just get a reference number of some sort. So what I'll do is I'll hook onto the bottom of the cup, and I do it the same way every time, so I'm never wondering, did I hook here or did I hook up here, what did I do? I always go to the very bottom, and every shock has some sort of a groove, or where the cap screws to the body, some line that's a constant. So I'll hook to the bottom and I'll go to that line and I'll get a number. So in this instance it's 15.5. I'll call that my gold number. Just for, that's the term I call it. The shocks I usually have a gold cap. That's how I come up with that. Nothing special. Anyhow, so 15.5. I write that down in my notes. Well, then when I take my shock off the car and I come over to the machine, instead of trying to get an eye to eye in the car when I'm all twisted around, I'll just run it up to that 15.5 that I measured in the car, and then I'll read what my real eye to eye is on the machine. Every machine has a way of measuring it, or you can go at that point and measure from your two pins to get what your true eye to eye is. But that's the most accurate way I've found of doing it. It's just easy, it's repeatable. So now I'm in my machine, I know what my real eye to eye on this car is, 18 and 13/16. The next thing I'll do is I will check what my bump gap is. Like if I'm coming off my pull down, I can see what my gap was when I pulled down. You know, I'll measure in, get my height. Okay, this had 2 5/8 bump gap. So on my sheet here, I'll write down what my eye to eye was, my 18 and 13/16. I'll look at what my number was on my machine for my load, 1233. When I documented all this, it's back 1235. Pound or two isn't going to make a difference. I'll write down what my gap was. I'll write down how much packer I have. I'll count the packer, so that way at the track, if I get making changes in practice and want to go back to my baseline, I can look at what how much packer I had and be like, okay, if I put 3/8 back in, I'm back to where I started. At the same time, I'll get a number from the top of my nut to that line, a coilover nut measurement, so that if I change springs and want to get back, I know I just got to screw that nut back down to the 5 inches in this instance, which I have documented on my sheet, and I do that for all 4 corners. That gives me that measurement. Then at the same time, with I'll install my travel rod, run the O-ring up to the top, and I'll measure down from the bottom of the O-ring, and I'll put a reference mark 4 inches down. Alright, so all that is a reference. But now let's say I go out on the track and I make a lap. I come back in, say I was getting 2 3/4 travel or something. Come back in. Car's up on jack stands now. Like, you don't have to wait for the car to come up or worry about the height. You just go up in the air right away. If you go to the 4-inch mark, to the top of your tape, to that 4-inch mark, wherever the bottom of that O-ring falls, in this instance it's 2 3/4 of an inch. So I know I got 2 3/4 of an inch shock travel. It's simple, there's no math, just wherever it lands, that's what it is. I use 4-inch because my cars don't travel 4 inches, so I'll never accidentally hit the tape. At the most I see 3 1/8, 3 1/4 travel. So that's why I picked 4, just because I'll never get to it. So it's a good reference number. So now you ran your lap, you can come in and look at your sheet and say, okay, I just got 2 3/4 left front travel. I'm at 1830 to 1900 pounds, give or take. You know, if you're in a stop where it's really gaining, it won't take much, another 16th or 32nd for that number to jump up to 2,000 pounds as it's gaining. But you got a pretty good idea where you're at without taking your spring back off the car and rating it. If you came in and said, okay, I had 2 7/8 travel across the front my first run, well, you're 2100, 1796. you got an idea where you're at. If you make your first run and you're like, okay, I got 2 5/8 left front and 3-inch right front and I'm tight, well, 1700 in the left front and almost 2200 in the right front, you're just laid in the right front. That's probably part of why you're tight. But it's easy to make a, a decision, an educated decision on what you got, and I have that for all 4 corners. I do them all the same way. Just saves time. But I see a lot of people struggle or don't keep track of their shock travels, and it's hard for me to help them or anybody to help them over the phone, or make suggestions if they have no idea what platform the car is, if it's dumped on the right front or what they've got going on. Now along with that, so I'll take my shock travel information, and there's the wear tabs on the bottom of the car, and I'll look at these 2 wear tabs down here, and I'll record in every run what they are off the ground, so I know where I'm at. If I'm dumped on the right front, like for me this would be pretty good in practice. I'm probably at heavy A 3/16 on the left and 5/16 on the right front off the track. I know when I drop my pressures to start the race, I should be good. I'll probably finish the race and they'll be cleaned off to 0 and a 16th or an 8th. Now along with all that, for each run, I have notes that I keep, right? So when I come in, I'll write down what them shock travels are. I just have a laminated sheet I printed out, got it laminated at Office Max. I can write down it with a Sharpie. I just have each run, I color coded it so that my tire temps, or I can have one guy, you just worry about the green. Another guy, you just worry about blue and red. You're my air pressure guy. The guy who does the light green stuff, you're taking shock travels. The guy who's climbing underneath there doing the wear tabs, you write them there. It just makes it easy, And then in mine, for instance, I've got, a little deal that shows, basically better, worse, or same. And then my entries is tight in, free in, neutral in. My center, it's tight center, free center, neutral center. And my exits, tight off, loose off, neutral off. And then I can dot, a 1 through 10, 10 being terrible, 1 being not too bad. So I can come in and be like, okay, it's better. It's still a tick tight in, so it's a 1 in. It's neutral in the center. And it's a tick loose off. It's a 1 loose off. Without writing a single word, I can have all that information, so the next day when I'm looking at it, I have it. And then I go home and put it in my computer, but everyone keeps different notes how they do it. But for me, that's a quick, easy way for a small team that doesn't have a lot of people to do a lot, just dot, 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 dot. They get all that. And then they can, like I said, they got their shock travel, so they can track that through the day and see how they've fixed or changed their attitude in their car. Back to this here, so once I have my eye to eye, I'll go to my, so this one's 18 and 13, 16, so I go to my 18, 13, 16. I even put a piece of tape along my scale and I'll draw a little line so that in a hurry in practice, I kind of know where my left front, right front, all 4 corner eye to eyes are. It's just as simple to get there. Then I'll rate it. So back to this sheet. Since I'm traveling 3 inches, I'm not really that concerned about the first 2 inches. I worry about the last inch. So, but I get my static number, my number at 1 inch, my number at 2 inches of travel, and then I start watching really every 1/8 after that. And those numbers are going to depend on what your travel is. If you're a no ride height guy, you're going to worry about from 0 to 1 inch because you're only traveling an inch. It just depends what you're doing. And again, like I said, I document what my gaps were, how much packer I have in both of them, and what my coilover nut was, so that I can get back there quick at the end of practice if I dial myself out and want to go back to how I unloaded. That to me is priceless, to know how to do that, and it's a time saver, really. I mean, to at the end of practice, to know what you really had and what changes you made. And be confident that you know what your shock travel is, and not the guys waiting on to measure stag or measure your tire split. He can jack the car up right away and not wait on shocks. You know what you have is a real number, and it correlates back to your machine. Now, obviously, if you add a packer, it's gonna skew that scale. But again, on this sheet, I even have, my adjustments are the white, right? So packer adjustments on this particular run, I added an 1/8 in the right front and a 1/4 in the left rear. So I would adjust those numbers, I would slide down the scale an 1/8 for it. I added an 1/8 in the right front, so my 2177 at 3 inches is now probably closer to that at 2 7/8. So you can kind of do the math. It's not exact, but it gets you a pretty good idea without having to take the springs off your car and go rate them. To me, like I said, that's to be able to know how to do this and do this the right way will help people be able to help you with support and to help you help yourself, just to know what you have. To me, it's one of the most important things that happens on the weekend as far as to tune your car, is to be able to do the prep work in the shop so that when you get to the track, this part's easy. For dialing yourself back in if you get lost, or for making adjustments with a real, you know what you have and you can make a known adjustment instead of just guessing at it. A lot of people just start throwing packers in and out, and they'll get themselves way out in left field. And you know, this is something that I felt was important.